Welcome to AI Role Models, a podcast from One Strategy Studio that goes beyond the hype to explore how real leaders are transforming their businesses with artificial intelligence. In each episode, I'll sit down with pioneers from the world's leading brands who are reimagining marketing, insights, and innovation with AI. But we're not here to talk about theoretical possibilities. These are candid conversations about the real challenges, unexpected victories, and practical lessons learned from implementing AI in organizations. Here's today's episode. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, wherever you're tuning into this episode from. I'm your host, Dave Carruthers, for another exciting episode of AI Heroes. Delighted to be joined today by Elle Park. Elle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Of course, it's so nice to be here. Just a week before the holidays kick off. So definitely in the festive mood over here at One Strategy Studio. I was expecting, as you can see, I've got some stockings behind me, so it's all go. So Elle, you've built your career across some of the biggest names in pharma: Lilly, Amgen, Apellis, and now Arcutis. How's your perspective on kind of market research tech evolved across these different companies, and what drew you into this kind of AI conversation specifically?
I would say that I started my career in data analytics and forecasting at Lilly, and that landed me headfirst in this giant millions of dollars of investment of claims data. And then I remember staying up at 2 a.m. Until 2 a.m. doing a business development forecast for a very urgent deal. I had to get it done over the weekend, presented it on Tuesday. And I remember thinking, how amazing would it be if I could just process this faster? Right? Yeah. Like, I have the thoughts. I wish I could just process this stuff faster. And I think that was the seed. And that was just like one of the first things. And I just saw in my head how the data could connect, and beyond forecasting, beyond commercial, into strategy, beyond strategy into like R&D. What if we had access to, or we could connect some of these data sets together to build better medicine, right? To have more options available for patients, how much of a better world it would be. And it was also a time when we were all talking about big data and how people were building data lakes, and people started having a vision for all the data that they were investing in. And I really bought into that vision at that time. And now, fast forward later, like years later, now we have the technology to be able to process all of that. And I think now really the question is a matter of guidance, right? How do we guide this burgeoning new frontier in a way that's going to be beneficial to humanity? And I think that's on us to figure out.
For sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit today. So we actually met, I think, for the first time at IIX in Washington, D.C., but then we caught up again at Quirks, New York, and you were presenting a really interesting kind of presentation called "Please Don't Sell Me Your AI Tool," which, I mean, I think it was you and Lisa Cotate, and quite a statement. I guess, what prompted you and Lisa to deliver that message to the industry? Because I know it was a packed house in there, and it was a great presentation. We'll dig into kind of the framework that you guys shared in a little bit. But yeah, what was the driving force between that? Was what you chose to present at Quirks?
All credit to Lisa for that title, for the first part, the attention captivating part, which was "Don't Sell Me Your AI Tool." And the reason we chose that title was because we wanted to capture your attention. We wanted to capture the attentions of everyone who offered an AI solution. Lisa and I go way back, and we connected over our shared love of innovation, the belief in our industry to be able to deliver real value to any business that we're a part of, and to be able to do it in the coolest, funnest way possible. So we've been talking about this kind of stuff for a long time off and on. And we, connected at IEIEX and had this, we connected again over this shared frustration with our inability to use some of the tools that were being offered. Some of the solutions being offered didn't really meet the criteria required to work in pharma. And, it was difficult getting really excited about an innovation, a conversation that you have with a potential supplier partner, and then being disappointed on the back end that they couldn't answer some of what we would consider basic questions to be able to pharmaceutical company.
No, that makes a ton of sense. Pharma's definitely a different beast, and some of the newer incumbents into the space. Definitely, it was a wake up call for some of the folks. I think we've seen at conferences this year. Definitely the year of AI. Everyone's talking about it. Few people are doing different and interesting things, but yeah, I think when you're trying to bring it into particularly a pharma company where there's layers of approval, legal, compliance, IT, procurement challenges, there's definitely a lot more considerations about what are the tools we choose, and are those tools kind of fit for purpose. And yes, it might be on the bleeding edge of innovation, but that doesn't mean we can just kind of throw all of the red tape out of the way and kind of just proceed gung ho. So before we kind of get into that framework and that you shared, I guess I want to talk a little bit about like where you have been kind of implementing AI in practice so far. When we caught up before this episode, you talked a little bit about some work you've done on an AI moderator chart audit study. So super concrete application, but it is obviously a heavily regulated space. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit about like what that looked like, what the problem was you were trying to solve for, and how did the kind of AI approach help with that?
Sure. So one of the issues with a chart audit study traditionally done is that it's a qualitative instrument, close-ended answers. And we essentially ask the question from the perspective of what the business wants to know. And what ends up getting lost between the boxes, as I like to say, is why they made those decisions, the rationale. And one of the things that we know from, I think, behavioral science and just our knowledge of human beings is that when people make decisions contextually, they don't always make the ideal decision. They don't make the decision they would love to make, especially when there is another party in the room that is weighing in. And a lot of the things that we're missing from the chart is what the patient said, or what other information was offered in that space in which that decision was made. And we applied an AI in situ kind of collection methodology that allowed people to talk through the chart, the actual decision that was made, and then talk through why that decision was made. The Gen AI aspect is that they were able to respond in real time, or it was able to respond in real time with follow-up questions that would add depth to the answers that were being given.
Yeah, we've seen there's been obviously a lot of development in that kind of AI moderator space, and being able to get to the why and kind of probe in a more human way. Is that something you're seeing more of, this kind of quant-qual hybrid approach to kind of research and insights right now?
I think it's being pitched. I think it's one of those things that anytime there's a new methodology, you have to have a researcher that's championing that methodology. People are quite comfortable with not fixing what isn't broken. And the issue there is then when you have a better method, you have the burden of convincing them it's the better method to deliver them, I think, beyond what they can imagine they can receive from a study. I think there's a lot of push to get it out there. I think from our end, at least on the pharmaceutical side, there are a lot of questions that we have to be able to answer anytime that we apply anything AI related. So we have to be able to explain the value that it brings above and
Mhm.
beyond what we would get from the traditional methods. Um, and how, for which parts is the AI being used? Is it just for collection, or is it for
Mhm.
analysis? And are there humans in the loop? Um, how is the data being housed and stored? Do the respondents know that this is AI that they're speaking to? And at the end of the day, the biggest question is, whatever it is that you just did for this project, would you be able to withstand an audit or a subpoena
Yeah.
with
I
there?
mean, yeah. I mean, we're dealing with pretty serious stuff there. When you think about kind of the measurement of the success and the kind of the metrics that mattered, how did you kind of come at that project? Obviously, there was a lot in terms of that you needed to share with the business about why AI was being used, how that, yeah, where in the process it touched, what was the kind of consent. But there is a big push in across all businesses now for teams to be doing more with AI. Like, we need to be doing more. We need to be doing more. And I don't want to say it's become a checkbox exercise, but it certainly in some cases people are looking to kind of justify they've done something with AI and kind of move on rather than kind of reimagining what's possible. I had a great chat with our insights leader yesterday, and her perspective was really about like AI is enabling us to do things. AI should be focused on what are the things previously we couldn't do for a variety of different reasons, but that's where it's really going to make a breakthrough. Yes, it can make things 20% better, 30% better here, and that's kind of interesting. But what is the true areas that it kind of breaks through? So I'm curious, like how you think about like measuring the success of these earlier projects, and what kind of falls into that kind of pilot bucket versus, okay, how does this change the way we're going to do things moving forward?
Mm. My rubric hasn't changed since I started my career in insights.
Okay.
Quality, speed, cost.
Yeah.
I'm told that you can usually only go for two of three. And I challenge that concept now with AI in tow.
Yeah.
So if we are able to get 80 responses in a time where we couldn't get, where we could only get 30, I think that's, speed is always an edge. Quality, I think for this case, for example, we were able to gather a lot of context that we would have been otherwise missing.
Yep.
Uh, and on the back end, the cost, there weren't necessarily savings per se, but I think if you are willing to be that spear point partner, that client side partner that is willing to go on this adventure with the firm, they're usually willing to at least work with you on the pilot pricing.
Yep.
And that's something that you can sell to your business as a short-term gain. And it was the combination of those things that actually helped me sell this to my stakeholders and my leaders.
Makes a ton of sense. So we talked a bit before about, there's a lot of work across the company happening around AI integration, and a lot of that, we appreciate can't be discussed publicly. But without kind of going into like specifics, can you give like listeners a sense of the scope or the ambition of what companies in the pharma space in general are kind of trying to work towards right now?
So Lilly just made $1 billion deal with NVIDIA for their AI factory.
Yeah.
And I think that really says it all, right? I mean, Lilly is,
Yeah.
back when I was there, I mean, there was a concerted effort that needed to be made, I think, to do some things on the data end, like where to store the data so that we can access it more readily. Those conversations were had while I was there, and that wasn't that long ago. So in like the past, my goodness, like 10 years or so, eight, these, like, they've kind of made the progress from that point to making this kind of investment
Yep.
down the line. So I would say that the risk is that if you feel like pharma has been resistant, I think that's valid, probably has been. But I think once things start to move, I think you start to see kind of exponential acceleration. And I think you should be prepared for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so fascinating to see, the work that some of the companies in the space are doing it, what it's going to mean for the speed that we see breakthrough innovation, new drugs, new cures, and all kinds of, I guess, the speed at which we can test. And yeah, making a $1 billion investment into chips and infrastructure and data centers is just a huge sign of how that is shifting, and where the investment's going. So let's talk a little bit. Let's go back to the presentation from Quirks, the framework that you and Lisa shared. The first thing that one of the things that you outlined was this fundamental mismatch between how agencies see AI and how clients experience it. Agencies see innovation and efficiency, and maybe clients see the hurdles, the real risks, the unexpected demands on time. Like, how do you go about kind of bridging that gap from the client side?
As with all things, trust requires transparency.
Mm-hmm.
It's the courage to entertain the thought that this partnership may not work out for now, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to be transparent. And when they're pitching an AI product or an AI solution, I think they're making the sale. They're doing the thing that they've always done, which is come up with something really great and then sell it to the people
Yep.
who use that product. But with AI, it is because of where it is right now in its development, in its and the buy-in that you've been able to get from different industries, especially pharma. I think it's more of a partnership that you're seeking. You're seeking a champion within a business who's going to go through all of the internal hurdles to be able to use that tool. And we want to use that tool, right? If we see the value of it, we want to use it. But let's say that you have someone who is less technically savvy. AI is a passion of mine. It has been for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about AI before people thought it would ever be a reality in our lifetime. But let's say that you're speaking with someone who is less savvy or less informed, then you have to actually help them speak to their leadership concisely and effectively about the value of the product. What exactly are you doing for the business, not how cool the product is? I'm not sure that I've seen better examples, and I've seen good examples and bad examples. I've experienced both, but I can see how someone who needed more of that help could fall through the cracks at that stage. And then once the championing researcher is interested, I think the conversation needs to be had about, all right, so what are some of the key concerns that your business has in using this tool? Privacy, security, who are the stakeholders in the room that we have to bring in? Do they want to talk to us? Do they want to see it on a slide? And have a plan, a roadmap to gather, like getting that buy-in before you start
Mm-hmm.
that project. And once they're bought in, the conversation goes much smoother. Also, be understanding of the fact that budget may or may not exist for said project. And especially if you're doing a project like this for the first time with a client, even if it's a client that you've worked with before, I would treat it as a shared risk and entice and I think partner accordingly, and including considering like cost discounts, because for us it is a risk. And when we say risk, the business has its risk, but when the researcher is pitching this kind of thing forward, it's a risk that they're taking with their career, their brands within the
Yep.
company. So understand that it's more serious for us than just buying a product.
Yeah, for sure. That professional risk, that reputational risk that has been built up over many years is important, and I think that's something that all agencies, vendors in the space, often they get so excited about what they've built and, you know, their absolute belief in it, that often that kind of empathetic side of selling and understanding that it's more than just, you know, writing a check for X dollars. There's more to it than that, from the business's perspective, but also from your champion's perspective is absolutely key. So one of the things that you talked about was like transparency and explainability. Your first question is always, can you explain how your AI reaches its conclusions in plain language? And AI gets put into this like black box, and how did it get there? And, you know, it kind of just did. But why is that explainability and transparency so critical in pharma specifically? And kind of what happens when vendors can't clearly articulate this for you?
I'll lead with the conclusion first, which is that if you can't explain it, we assume that there is a high likelihood that you're going to miss something important.
Yeah.
So this is a conversation that I recently had with an internal partner who was asking about this AI project or AI-driven chart audit project. You know, so where is the AI deployed? What part is the AI doing versus humans? Are they doing the complete, are they doing the analysis on the back end? And their concern was that they would miss certain things. And so I had to be able to explain to them, in this case, like it wasn't an issue at all, but that's always the concern on the back end. What would AI miss that a human wouldn't? And by the time, if you can't make us trust that it's not going to miss anything important, then it's just not reliable. It's not useful. I'd rather use a human, because a human can take accountability. What am I going to do? Like, sue your AI tool?
Yeah.
So it's,
so that accountability is critical. I think there's definitely, it's really interesting, the kind of the Gen AI layer that we've now got. I think there's some incredible work, particularly around, you know, innovation, white space. But, you know, one of my conversations yesterday was very much around, we're really comfortable now using AI where there isn't a definitive right or wrong answer, and it's actually additive to the thinking and a brainstorming partner and kind of bring in wider things. But we still have a lot of hesitation and reservation where there's a binary right or wrong answer, because AI does an incredible job, and we've all seen this, of making you believe that it's definitely got to the right answer. And many times it has, and that there's you know, hallucinations, or it's willingness or want to kind of tell you what it wants you to believe. Is definitely evolving and improving over time with each iteration of the model, but we're still seeing this again and again. You know, as where kind of leaders are kind of comfortable and not comfortable. Thinking about, oh, sorry, I'll go on.
If I may add just a little bit to that, I think what would be advisable to do, just understanding a little bit about how some of these things get developed. I think a lot of the tools right now are kind of that, the things that would potentially displace like a junior researcher, the person who would be writing up summaries based on desk research they've done, or an executive summary paragraph or something like that. Just to streamline like the hundreds of slides that we receive. And what I like to do whenever I get my hands on a new tool is try to break it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like to see where it fails. It tells me a lot about whom I can entrust with this tool, because if I need someone who is good at prompts to be able to use this tool that's of a certain value, if I can throw like a contractor at it and then be like,
how about
go,
it?
go get what I need, regardless of how used to Gen AI you are, then that's of a different value.
Yeah.
So I'm like, like if all these demos that I've done, if the engineers were to take a look, they would probably feel like this woman knows nothing about Gen AI. She has terrible prompts, and it's because
Yeah.
I actually try to use terrible prompts that somebody unknowing of the space would try to
Yeah.
to get what they need. And then it tells me how much you understand people, how much your AI understands about how they ask things, especially in this space. Um, and it tells me kind of how it, and the results that I received tells me how it connects the dots and pulls the data and where it goes to look.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah. And
so
I
it's
think
anyone with a tool out there that needs
before I,
it robustly testing, make sure it gives, send it across to Elle. Elle, I'm curious, you talked about, of the various demos you've done, tools you've tested. Give us a sense of like how often your email inbox is being hit up with a new tool to test. Like, how do you, because I'm sure like on your side of things, you're getting pitched left and right with every tool under the sun. Like, how you, what is it that, how many of those tools have you looked at, and kind of what is the difference between, something piquing your interest and just kind of putting in a seen it before category?
yeah, I'd say that I try to look at everything that people pitch. I mean, why not? I would, I want to learn and I want to know
Curiosity, right? I mean, that's the key.
exactly. I want to test everything. I am unfortunately limited by time. Um, and so I have to do a little bit of screening in terms of like the 5 questions that I ask. It gives me a sense of how mature your tool has the potential to be before I even demo it. Because if I like it, I'm going to bring it to my leadership. I'm going to go talk to people with it. But I don't want to be going out talking about a tool that I can't ultimately use.
Yep.
So I asked the questions, and then of those, I'd say about 40% I demoed. And I have purchased a seat on one tool.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, that's
yeah. But yeah, no. If anyone else wants to pitch me another tool, please do. Just don't be offended if it takes me a while to get back to you.
That makes sense. Well, I love the curiosity. Privacy and security, obviously, a huge side of things. Particularly on when dealing with patient level data, HCP feedback. What are the questions that researchers maybe should be asking around some of these tools that they often don't, as it pertains to privacy and security?
My big thing is that you can tell a lot about a company's strategy or brand strategy from the questions you ask. So I think it's base stakes that, or table stakes, that the materials that you upload are not visible to another human. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also important that another person can't see the questions you ask.
Yeah, so keeping that mm-hmm. kind of those silos in place, and being able to kind of protect that from both sides, right?
Exactly. And I'm also, but the other one would be to do some testing, some heavy testing of the tool first. So the answers you already know. Oftentimes, I think people will test using answers that they want. It's kind of like they use it as like a bit of free research or free, junior researcher for a week or so.
Yeah.
I personally like to dig into the things that I've already processed, where I know the answers, or at least I know the conclusions that I've drawn, to see if it arrives at the same answer. And then I compare and contrast how it got to that the answer and how it got to that answer. Because at the end of the day, when you use it, you have to be able to trust that it will arrive at the correct and most optimal conclusion best available knowledge.
And in your experiences with some of those side-by-side tests that you've run, have you been, and in the fact that, and maybe the fact that you've only been able to kind of, you've demoed 40% and you've only bought one of those tools so far, does that speak to a disconnect between the results you saw when you were there? Was that the leading reason of kind of not moving forward? Was it something else? I'm just curious as to when you do that side-by-side test, how often are you seeing comparable results that you make you feel comfortable about that tool?
That was the primary reason. Sometimes it didn't reference using prompts that the layperson would use, or potentially like a junior researcher would use. It wasn't even referencing the documents that I asked it to reference, for example.
Yep.
Or it wasn't picking up on any of the like the charts in the PowerPoint. It was only picking up on the headlines, like the text that was in the slide, where it was like represented to me that it actually looks at the full slide, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and like just from it, kind of most of them screen themselves out on the usability end.
Okay, that's super helpful. One of the other things you touched on was that regulatory readiness, and I think you mentioned it. Are you ready for an audit or even a subpoena? Which is, a question that probably makes many vendors uncomfortable. And I think particularly what you've seen in this AI gold rush that we've seen is a lot of the companies that have moved into the space. And yes, you've got some of the more legacy companies building tech or adding it into their products, but you're also seeing a kind of huge amount of like new up and coming startups that are getting into this space. Why is that question around the audit and the subpoena such a non-negotiable when working with healthcare, and what does being truly prepared look like for these companies?
When I was in my data analytics role at Lilly, I got audited quarterly.
Good.
At some point, I had to go back to IMS, now IQVIA, part of IQVIA, and we had to show them in a way that didn't violate contract that we were not putting certain data sets together that shouldn't be put together.
Okay.
Doing that in a way that actually, didn't expose like, IQVIA proprietary information and, the things that their legal team would allow was tough, but we got it done. And the reason that got done was because I was coming up with answers that they didn't think were previously possible. The constant question to me was, how did you get this though? Like, we've never seen this kind of answer come from this kind of analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know how you would have possibly known this without, connecting to consumer data that you're not allowed to do, or like connecting, making a person identifiable. We don't know how we would have gotten this answer. And so I had to go through, like, be very transparent with my methodology, the business rules that were used, even the data set, like how it was de-identified from the start. So there was no way that I would ever know. And there was no way that we could connect to like their geographical location or anything that would be remotely identifiable. So having gone through that, I think it kind of burned into my memory also because it was the start of my career. Whenever you start to have answers that were not previously possible in a data privacy sensitive area, people are going to ask questions because that's what they're there to do. And have to be able to answer them, or it starts a lot more. The things get very like a lot bigger if you're not able to answer those questions right away in a satisfactory way.
Yeah, there's definitely something that some of these companies that are more at an early stage, I think, are underprepared for. And again, kind of, I think that's why you often see very few of these truly really early stage companies start with healthcare as a vertical. They all have aspirations to get into that vertical and to expand into it, but it does take a certain level of maturity from a company perspective, from an infrastructure, data sec, and all of those things. You also touch on kind of the consent side of things. The presentation talks about how we're all patients, super powerful reminder. How does that kind of perspective shape how you think about AI and respondent data? And I guess, what's your approach to ensuring participants kind of understand and consent to the AI involvement in their data? Obviously something, it sounded a lot more futuristic maybe a couple of years ago. Now, many of us are using AI in our daily lives, things like that. So do you see, have you seen resistance from patients and participants on that? How is that changing the consent side of things?
I'd say that I don't see it directly, but it wouldn't surprise me to get that pushback. I mean, there are people who are uncomfortable sharing their data at all, right? Yeah. So that goes to show that if we were to add AI to it, they'd be even more vehemently against that. And I think that is their right. I say I think, but I know it's their right because it's my right. And my ethics drive me to treat their rights as I do my own. It's something that I am personally passionate about. I think it's about, if we're coming up with technology and the justification for the amount of investment that we make into technology and innovations is for not just for growing wealth, but also for the betterment of humanity.
Yep.
Then, and as a pharmaceutical company, we are intrinsically tied to the outcome of the patient. And I think it's something that we have to be very mindful of. And we need to behave in such a way that reflects that philosophy. So I guess the way I approach it is through clear consent. Not a consent form full of language that they don't understand, but whenever I am involved, like as I was in when I was at Apellis doing rare disease, trying to convince rare disease patients to share their experience with us, I was very clear about how their data would be handled. What the information they were providing us with, or rather how that information would be used. Yeah. I believe I behaved ethically, and that actually helped with our recruitment quite a bit. We got people into recruitment who had been very resistant to the market research before because of that approach. And I take that same approach to AI. This is a trust building exercise. And I think the more transparent you are, and especially if you do work that also benefits patients on the back end, which I believe the work that I do does.
Yep.
And they actually start to see it in real life, that trust will build, and then they will become less resistant to participating in something that is going to potentially help them. But in order to do that, we have to self-set some guardrails so that things don't spin out of hand. We're not putting people at risk. We're not harming people inadvertently. I think that's something that I put on myself. I can't speak for other people, but that's me.
I see that a lot, particularly in the world that you operate in, particularly for, things, as you say, like rare disease, and where the populations of these audiences and patients, can be very, very small. I think if you look at the more broader research space, we've believed for too long that there's an abundance of people that will be willing to do this, and we've eroded trust amongst the general population a lot of times with that. I think farmers have never had that luxury of having, hundreds of millions of people to go after to help with insights on that. So I think it's right that there's more rigor applied there. I wish more rigor had been applied maybe in other industries as well. But I guess the one thing you do benefit from is the fact that all of your work is focused on helping people that are suffering with similar challenges, and therefore there's more meaning to the work for participants than coming up with a new flavor of toothpaste or coffee alternative or whatever. So yeah, it's a really interesting kind of landscape for finding and recruiting people for these types of things. So final question on the framework. The final question focuses on measurable business value. What does meaningful proof look like to you? And I guess what separates genuine evidence from marketing claims, which we see a lot of at various events and presentations?
Yeah, this is my favorite question. This is also my favorite.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I have the reputation with some people as being a bit exacting, it's probably because of things like this. Whenever I go into a POC, what I like to do, it doesn't always happen because it requires time and conversation, but with something that is like, let's say it's a completely new vendor, just a very data involved AI tool, like something that is going to require both significant monetary and human resource investment. I like to have a rubric. And a line on the markers of success. So I think this involves the stakeholders. It's a larger internal conversation, to inform this rubric. You would absolutely want to make sure that the supplier partner understands exactly what they have to deliver and what success looks like. I think that's only fair, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it's a proof of concept. If it doesn't go well, the one thing you can get out of it is supposed to be learning. And I think with a very clear markers for success, prospectively set, helps you do that. It helps you learn exactly where you could do better and what additionally would have made this a home run project.
Yeah. And with that rubric, what are some of the categories you have on that rubric? Does it vary for each project? Is it more customized? Yeah. So it's more customized on a project by project basis as to how you want to evaluate.
Exactly. Because the project, there's a different, what does great look like for each project? So it's basically quantifying or kind of outlining what great looks like in a quantifiable way.
I guess a takeaway there for listeners is that the investment in time up front to really have a structured expectation, particularly, and I think, on the supplier side, there's an onus on them to not want to skip through that step and see that because it's actually what's going to unlock more opportunity, more kind of business downstream. But a lot of people want to skip that early work and get straight to the doing rather than the planning. So yeah, that's great feedback. Kind of last section, I want to kind of dive into a little bit more on kind of AI strategy and kind of future state and kind of looking ahead. I think if you think about where we are today, I'd love to know where you think we might be. If you look at the current landscape, what's working today and what's genuinely delivering value today and what's holding us as an industry back. And I think that can be insights just within pharmaceutical. But I would love to get your take on kind of what's working today and where are we stuck.
What's working today? I think as people get more familiar with tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, the solutions that an LLM can solve, I think, are what people are used to. Even AI moderation, anything that involves language probably has a little bit more trust. I would say on the data side too, just because some of the earlier AI or machine learning applications were happening in the R&D space or in like diagnostics, R&D space. I would say that people trusted a little bit more there too in like the data processing side. Even visualization, I think creatively people are trying to make those models cleaner where you're able to build a slide based on the information given.
Yep.
Still a lot of work to be done there, but I think, that's kind of coming up. The future state, I think there's a few different ways that it can pop off. I think in the consumer space, agentic is, I think that's already happening, but I think that's going to take a pretty permanent seat. I think agentic AI is a possibility in pharma also. I am really excited for the orchestration of the different AI methods we deploy. I think that is the cutting, bleeding edge as we look forward. If I'm playing futurist a little bit, I think that's going to be the next frontier. If I may share a concern.
Absolutely.
I think something that we need to actually watch out for is the pipeline of talent.
100%.
Our space, because right now people are using AI as a cost-cutting measure. They're trying to kind of displace humans with some of the work that they're doing, and it is in reality, I think, displacing some junior researchers that would be coming into our industry, and now they're being routed elsewhere. But what that means is that down the line, a few years, 5 years down the line, we're going to be short on the mid levels that we need. Right? You're the way that juniors learn is to be hands-on, to go through the kind of the menial work, do some of the heavy lifting, be in the room for the conversations, learn what is and isn't important from a deck by having to, draft these executive summaries.
Yep.
And they're not having the opportunity to do that. And I think there is a way forward where we can fold them in, train them to do different things at the junior level as we scope out that junior level and what that means. But right now, I don't see that being actively done. I don't know that. I think most people haven't even registered it as a problem yet. It's something that I brought up to an Insights Association dinner that I was invited to.
Yep.
And like I asked the question, and I think a few people became interested, once I brought it up. But I don't know that anyone's actively addressing that and looking 5 years down the road at what this is going to do to our field in the next 5 years.
I agree. It's definitely a problem to think about. I think the AI maximalist would take the view, which creates a bigger downstream problem, that in 5 years' time, models and agentic approaches and this human agentic interaction will have evolved so much further that it won't just be the junior levels that we're removing. It can go further. That I'm not saying that's my view. I'm just saying that that's what an AI maximalist would probably tell you that, which creates even larger larger concern. So yeah, I think it's I have two daughters that are 13 and 15, and kind of figuring out where what are they going to do and go to college and what skills are important, and it's just trying to figure out what the future of work for our children will look like. Right now, even as someone who is so absorbed in this space, is almost impossible to predict exactly where the puck is going to be heading towards and where people should be skating. So yeah, I echo the same sentiments that you shared around what does it mean, and how do we make sure that great talent stays in our industry and grow, and both they can grow within that. But I think that's candidly not a challenge that's unique just to market research and insights and innovation. It's look at engineering, creative disciplines, right across the board we're seeing that. Elle, just kind of as we kind of wrap this up, I guess you've shown an incredible amount of structure as to how you're thinking about this, incredible amount of curiosity to time permitting to expand and look at what's out there or what could be done. What advice would you have for your peers in the space that want to be as proactive as possible, but potentially are feeling, overwhelmed by the complexity and variety and the speed of change that we're seeing? Where should they be starting, and what are some of the first steps that you feel like will move them forward?
Well, the first would be to watch this podcast.
Obviously, like and subscribe.
Not just this episode, but all of it. It's great. But like, my levity aside, I think the key is to actually connect with others and start talking about it so that we're not so siloed in our concerns. I think, you'll find that there are plenty of people who share similar and can kind of add to the thought. And I would say we're all curious people. I think that's why we're in the industry we're in.
Of course, yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to make room for that curiosity when we have so much to execute. I personally have been going to more conferences lately to connect with people, actually presenting at some of them. Recently joined the Insights Association, hope to get more involved there once this mad Q4 rush is over. And I think, just a quick plug for the case study that I'll be presenting with ZoomRx at Intellis at the Intellis Summit in Chicago.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But I would say attend the conferences, go listen to these case studies, see how other people are using it, and just start talking to them. I think most people are open to a conversation. And I would find ways to get excited about the inevitable change that is happening, and then figure out what part you want to play in that. I've decided my part is going to be an innovator. I want to be on the cutting edge. And mostly because I want to help drive where it goes and also where it doesn't go, to a place where this is one of those tools that has the potential for great harm. And I want to prevent that. And you can really only do that if you're not following. You have to be there for the conversations that would
set the direction and the trajectory. Yeah,
exactly. That set the trajectory. Perfect. Yeah. And so if you're concerned, be there. Don't shy away from it. That's not the answer.
That's fantastic advice. I love this. Get excited about the possibility and where you can have most impact. Elle, this has been a fantastic episode. It's been so great to hear your perspective on all things and bring that kind of pharmaceutical healthcare lens into the discussion as well. So obviously, if people want to connect with you, I'm sure they can connect with you on LinkedIn. Just look up Elle Park. And just thank you again from the team here at One Strategy. Wishing you a great holidays, and hopefully connect again in person at a conference soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This was such a great opportunity. What a great conversation. Thanks, Dave.
Al. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to AI Role Models. Follow now wherever you get your podcasts to be notified of new episodes. Connect with One Strategy on LinkedIn to join us for live recordings. Don't forget to leave a review, and we can't wait to see you again soon for our next episode.